On to topic number 2. Amazon's new Sidewalk feature will share your internet with the streets. If you have something like Amazon Alexa or Echo or Tile or a lot of other Amazon devices, you are currently signed up for something called Amazon Sidewalk. And this is also to people in the United States right now. It's going to be rolling out to the rest of the world eventually. But you are automatically enrolled in something called Amazon Sidewalk. And what that is a new mesh wireless service that will share a small portion of your internet bandwidth with neighboring sidewalk capable devices. You guys can't see, but I'm doing air quotes when I do sidewalk capable devices that don't have connectivity and will give you some of their bandwidth back in return if you don't have connectivity. So essentially what is going on is, I'll use the tile tracker, for instance, right? Let's say if your dog runs away from home and he runs outside of your Wi-Fi network and the tile isn't connected to something on your Wi-Fi network, you don't know where your dog is. As it passes, let's say someone down the street that has an Amazon Ring doorbell, it is going to connect to the internet that Ring doorbell is connected to, so your internet, and it's going to reach up to the cloud and say, hey, Sparky is 2 blocks south, and it's going to send it back to you. So even though your tile isn't connected to that person's internet, through this Amazon Sidewalk, it's going to connect to the cloud seamlessly without them having to connect to your Wi-Fi. And it's sort of initially sounded to me like Apple's whole Find My network, right? It sounds like, if you lose your iPhone or you lose your AirTag and it's passing by someone else with the iPhone, it's going to send a message to that iPhone. That iPhone is going to send a message to you to say, hey, your lost thing is here. It may not be connected to the internet, but someone who is connected to the internet can see where your lost thing is and send that information back to you. I brought this up to you a couple of days ago. Did you get a chance to do some looking into Amazon Sidewalk? And what are your thoughts on this new service that Amazon has kind of sneakily rolled out?
Yeah, this one really baffles me. It baffles me because it's news in particular. So yeah, you brought this up to my attention, and one of the first things that I mentioned saying is I didn't know that already wasn't a thing. I didn't know that these devices already didn't communicate with each other in a mesh network. And I guess to kind of roll back a little bit on that, so there is this thing called IPv6, and it is this idea that the world is running out of IP addresses, unique IP addresses. And, the IP address is essentially the address of your computer. It's going to be the thing that tells whatever website or whatever you're doing, this is this person's location, this is their address, this is where I need to send the information to. And there were so many computing devices that, we were running out. And, you couldn't really have a unique IP address for every single device that existed. So IPv6 was created, and essentially it was, instead of regular IP addresses, which were 3 sets of 3 digits in base 10, so 0 to 9, this was now a large hexadecimal string of characters, which is, instead of base 10, it's base 16. So you have 16 characters to choose from in a large string that could make a wide variety of addresses, unique addresses for a wide variety of devices. And the idea of that was the future of IoT, or the Internet of Things, where pretty much every single thing, every appliance, every phone, every computer could have its own unique address and communicate with the internet. And we started seeing this, in the past decade or so, where we have fridges now that can tell us when we're out of milk and order it from Amazon. We have thermostats that can change the temperature when, we leave the house or come back in. We have washing machines that can turn on a laundry at a specific time. even if we're not there to attend to it. That has kind of been the reality of where things have been going is, more and more devices are going to be connected to the internet. Now, on top of that, there are a bunch of devices that do not directly connect to the internet, but still have forms of communication. And in this case, with Amazon Sidewalk, a lot of devices that use Bluetooth. And, what these devices do is they send that information, that, a packet of information that you would necessarily send on an internet pipeline, but because they don't have connection to the internet, they send them to each other over Bluetooth until they reach a device that is connected to the internet and say, okay, now I can send that to Amazon servers. So like you mentioned, lost dog wanders outside of your backyard where you could keep an eye on him because of his tile tracker and it's connected to your local network. But now it's gone. It's out of range. It's out of range of your local network. It's out of range from your phone. It's out of range from your Bluetooth and your Wi-Fi. Wandered down the street. You have someone down the street who happens to have a Ring doorbell or a camera on the outside of their house that has a Bluetooth signal. That now tile tracker can send a packet to that camera that's in that person's house, and that camera is connected to that person's internet. So that packet can then be transferred to the internet and then back to, let's say, your phone that says, okay, your dog is 10 doors down. You can go get him. We'll show you where he is. And the interesting thing about this being news is you said it perfectly. This sounds almost identical to Apple's Find My network, especially when they brought up AirTags. And the interesting thing is AirTags wasn't news, not in this sense. Like, it was news as, oh, it's a cool new product from Apple. It wasn't news of, oh, you need to now disable your Find My network. It was more like, oh, this is a cool new thing, a new way of us, finding things that we've lost because there's so many iPhones around. So it will always be in range of something that can communicate back with you. Where in Amazon's case, where a similar thing, they have a lot of products, specifically smart home products, that communicate with the internet. They recently just made a deal, and I think we spoke about it on the podcast, with Tile, where that Tile can now tap into Amazon's network, whereas they had an issue with not being allowed to tap into the Find My network because Apple wanted them to abandon their own service and just wholly integrate into the Find My network and only use Apple's kind of service, which means they'd have to ditch their app and all of the infrastructure that they already built. They made a deal with Amazon that they could tap into Amazon's network. Amazon Sidewalk comes out, and it kind of rivals, not necessarily in terms of the amount of devices, because Apple's always going to have that lead over a lot of their competition, but it brings it a little bit closer because, there's going to be someone out there that does have an Amazon device, a smart doorbell or a camera or, an Echo, and that just allows that information to travel back and forth. And just to go into a little bit of what is being transferred and what isn't. So generally, what Amazon is showing here is they gave a lot of information about this program, interestingly enough, which is very different from Apple's kind of way of advertising AirTags. Whereas in Apple's case, it's very marketing speak. It's not a lot of hard facts and hard data. Like, for example, Apple doesn't say how much data they cap with the Find My network or with AirTags, whereas Amazon does. They say that they are going to cap it at 500 megabytes per month, which is about 16 megabytes per day, to give or take. And they are going to cap it at about 80 kilobytes per second, I think they said, where, it's going to be pretty slow speed. So it's not going to be a situation where they're going to just use a bunch of your data for this network. And all of the information is encrypted end to end. So once it leaves, the end device, which could be a tile tracker, and reaches a hub, which could be your neighbor's Ring doorbell, that packet is encrypted. Your neighbor can't see any of that information, and you can't see any of your neighbor's information. So you can't access your neighbor's Wi-Fi. Your neighbor's Wi-Fi can't access your phone or your dog's tracker. None of that stuff can be accessed by either or. Very similar to how the Find My network works. Like, for example, with the AirTags, Apple made it very clear that if you lost your AirTag, no one else can see where your AirTag is. It will communicate with that person's phone, kind of under the radar. So it's not telling the person's phone, hey, this person's AirTag is here. It's doing that kind of transparently to the person, which is the same thing here with Amazon. So yeah, I think this whole kind of story is really interesting just from the fact that it's become such a big story and become such a big controversy to the point where there's a lot of talk about disabling Amazon Sidewalk, which I don't remember there being the same kind of conversation about Apple. And I think where that comes down to is there seems to be a lack of trust with a company like Amazon compared to a company like Apple. And there also seems to be a very big difference in marketing from a company like Amazon to a company like Apple. Whereas Amazon has given a lot more of, technical specs of how these things work and what they're going to do with the packets. Like, they gave very detailed information on what is in these packets, how they're going to be transferred, what is transparent, and what, is actually able to be seen by servers. Whereas Apple doesn't give any of that information, but because their marketing is so rock solid, they don't need to. And I think that's a really interesting thing that companies probably need to look at going forward, that maybe less information is better, but also maybe you have to build your brand as a security brand before you start embracing IoT and, these mesh networks that share, between different customers. Whereas Apple can do it because they have this really solid impression that they really care about their customers' privacy. I don't think that's the same thing that Amazon has, and I think that's where you kind of see a little bit of this controversy.
I think marketing plays a huge part in it, right? Definitely does. And I do see what you're saying about, less is better, right? And as soon as you say or as soon as you said that, it reminded me of the launch of Sony and Xbox, right? Xbox was given all kinds of information. This is the architecture. This is how the air flows throughout the system. This is how many teraflops this is going to have. And Sony, they literally just showed their console and that was it.
Yeah.
And when you look at how much more buzz Sony generated, right? Because marketing wise, that's a better ploy. You give people a little bit and you create this sense of curiosity, right? Oh, I gotta, what's going to be so good about this? How powerful is this thing going to be? How is air going to flow through this? Instead of giving everything out on the very first trailer you have. But back to marketing, right? As you said, Amazon gave a lot of information as to what's going to happen. They put out a full white paper detailing all the technology that's going into this thing. Apple didn't give any of the technology because they knew they didn't need to. All they needed to do was make a cool video of some guy diving in his couch and everyone's sold. Oh, I left my purse at the gym on the elliptical machine. Oh, yep, here's the cool app that points me directly to it. I mean, a lot of the news that I've seen about Amazon Sidewalk, and I didn't even know it was called Amazon Sidewalk until I started looking for it. I just heard the Amazon internet, right? And I think I brought this up to you and I was like, oh man, did you hear? Amazon's going to start launching their own internet and they're going to use people's devices, their Ring doorbells and their Echo tabs to provide internet to people. And, it's going to make so much money, but there's no money being charged. This is sort of like an additional service that Amazon, I guess, is provided for free to everybody who's part of the network. It's very funny just how much marketing plays into it. And, when we were talking about, Amazon doesn't have the sort of trust that Apple has as a security brand. Could you imagine if Facebook decided to do this? And I think part of the thing too is Amazon didn't, at least as far as the media networks that I see, that I view, that I follow, Amazon didn't make a announcement about this. They didn't make a big presentation about it. Apple did this in a keynote. They had a section of their big keynote dedicated to the Find My network and to AirTags. This is almost like, because Amazon didn't make it public, it's almost like someone was sneaking around through their update logs and they found, oh, Amazon is pushing this thing out on June 8th. And, for anyone listening to this is after June 8th. So you may not know that this is active on your thing. And even if Amazon came out and said, hey, we're expanding our Internet of Things network to make it easier to find, your lost devices with Tile. Here's this great new partnership that we're doing to make things easier for you. That would go a lot further than me hearing about it on one blog and then kind of relaying it broken telephone to you on another space, and then us trying to figure out what's going on exactly. So it's kind of, it's a balance of marketing, right? We're saying that, okay, Amazon gave too much information and Apple didn't give, that detailed information. So that's why people like Apple's marketing better. But now I'm saying that, Amazon didn't even say anything about it. So it's kind of, let's just say Amazon needs some work on their marketing. And back to my point, if Facebook did this, there would be complete revolt. They would have taken it to Congress. They would have marched on City Hall. They would have burnt Facebook headquarters down because absolutely nobody trusts Facebook's brand. I mean, Facebook is talking about launching a smartwatch now that has like cameras and stuff on it. Nobody's interested in that, Facebook. Just throwing it out there. No one trusts you. Apple could like put a chip in their watch that literally controls your brain, and they could tell you that and people would still eat it up just because they trust them way more than Facebook does. But I mean, it's great for anyone who's part of this Amazon network. This, whether it's, you have a Tile or you have these Echo devices or Alexa devices, it's great for anyone who's a part of it. I just think it would have been a lot better to think of the marketing behind rolling it out, because that plays a big part of how successful it is too. Because like you said, there are people going around writing blog posts, doing videos about how to disable this new Amazon Sidewalk network. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing like that for the Find My network, right? No one's saying, oh, Amazon snuck, like no one's saying Apple snuck this Find My network onto your phone. Here's how to disable it quickly so they can't get your information. Like no one's saying that. So they could save themselves a lot of headaches just working on the marketing a little bit.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think what you're saying is absolutely right, but I don't think that's giving Apple enough credit, because Apple has been able, they're the only company that can control the narrative on everything they do. They 100% control the narrative. And let's not pretend that Apple hasn't had security issues, because they absolutely have. Very big profile ones, high profile security issues. But they can still control the narrative because they have such a large base that they can have a WWDC. They can have an event to launch products, and people will actually watch. Amazon released a new tablet. No event, probably a news story somewhere. They've talked about Amazon Sidewalk for years. But, now because it's finally being implemented, it was an idea and something that they were working on. Now that it's finally being implemented as of June the 8th, now it becomes news. But even if they did have a big conference and they stood on a stage and talked about, their new Fire tablet and their new Kindles and all this stuff, no one would watch. Because at the end of the day, Amazon doesn't have the brand recognition as Apple. And I think that's the key to what Steve Jobs did with the iPod and the iPhone, and not just Steve Jobs, but the whole Apple team, is they built the ability to control the narrative more than the products. It's about the idea of, we can tell you this is the best product. Regardless of if it isn't or isn't, you'll believe us. And I think that is what a good brand is supposed to do. And I don't think there is, like you mentioned, especially not Facebook. None of these other tech brands, specifically tech brands, have that ability. It's something that's very common in fashion, but not at all common in tech. And I think Apple's the only company that can do it right now.
I think so.